Galanter, IBA News.
And joining me now in the studio to talk about the legislation to block foreign funding to some humanitarian NGOs is Professor Gerald Steinberg, head of NGO Monitor. Professor Steinberg, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Yochanan.
All right, now, there are some politicians, even though this legislation has the backing of the Prime Minister, people like Benny Begin, Ruby Rivlin, they're right of center politically. They say this is an anti-democratic bill, and it's only going to further tarnish Israel's image in the international community. Would you agree?
This is a problematic proposal, and I don't think it's going to get through the legislative process, and we heard some of the objections to it. But that doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist. What we just saw in Eli Wogelanter's presentation, his summary, the huge amounts of money, certainly in Israeli terms. This is a massive industry. These are non-governmental organizations funded by foreign governments. What is it you don't understand about the word non-governmental? And that's a real problem. These organizations are also, they all talk about human rights. They all use that language. These are political organizations. They are opposition organizations run by people who couldn't make it in Israeli democracy. Israel has a very vibrant democracy. They're free to say whatever they want. But they're almost a monopoly, or at least a cartel, on the human rights discourse within Israel. And that causes a great deal of damage, particularly not just within Israel. Why does B'Tselem, 11 million shekels plus, I think there's more money in there that's hidden in different ways, why does it have an office in Washington to lobby the American government to promote terms like war crimes before the American public if they are designed to influence the Israeli public and to change the Israeli discourse? And the same is true with another 10, 15 organizations in different ways. So there is a serious problem. This legislation or this proposal probably is not going to address it significantly.
The Prime Minister has intimated that these organizations incite the public and are meddling in Israel's internal affairs. What are some of the more outrageous incidents that you recall being investigating?
Well, first of all, there are two different fronts. There's the internal Israeli front, and then, as I indicated, there's also the external front. I think the external one is more of a problem. When you have all of these groups going to the European Parliament, going to U.S. Congress, going to the UN, and continuously using terms that condemn Israel, that call Israelis war criminals, that use the term apartheid, which even Judge Richard Goldstone, who authored the report that had all of this NGO claims in it on the Gaza war, when he says that that's a terrible, despicable slander, and these organizations promote that type of language and that type of campaign, that has a real impact on the isolation, what we call the delegitimization of Israel. They certainly shouldn't be doing it, and they certainly should not be funded by European governments under the facade of human rights and other democratic progress and other types of good-sounding activities. Within Israel, what's happened is because they have so much money, they're able to go to the courts constantly. They are repeat plaintiffs that continuously go to the courts. And that has an influence. They are the ones who can provide the fellowships from their ideological political position, an opposition position, not through the democratic process, to bring in people and say, well, you know, when you're a young, bright lawyer or someone who's working in the political field, we're going to pay you a fellowship as long as you toe our line. So you have a large number of people who've been through that process, and it's like a monopoly, and that's also very problematic. Again, all because of not Israeli funding. This is not Israelis who take out their checkbooks or their cash and say, hey, I want to help these organizations. It's mostly foreign governments, mostly Europeans, mostly in secret, and it's that transparency that does the lack of transparency, which is so undemocratic and the biggest danger here.
Professor Gerald Steinberg of NGO Monitor, good to have you with us. Thank you for your comments and insight.